Have any of you seen a short animated film called Inner Workings? If you have not, I highly recommend it because it is the best depiction that I have ever seen of somebody choosing life. It can be easily found on YouTube, and if you watch it later, let me know because I would love to discuss it with you. The feature Inner Workings starts by showing an animated man waking up to the sound of his alarm clock. He begins to go through his morning rituals, waking up, stretching, going to the bathroom, getting in the shower, etc. These are rituals that we do every single day. However, what is unusual about this man's day is that as he goes through his morning wake-ups, we see him imagining his death over and over again. It's a little unusual for a cartoon, I know, but stay with me. The first time it occurs is when he is dancing in a shower and he is listening to music, and then he imagines himself slipping in the shower and sees his coffin. Next, he considers eating delicious pancakes for breakfast, but then in his mind, if he eats these pancakes, then he's going to want all sorts of other foods to eat. And again, this will be a step towards his death. This happens over and over again throughout his day. Each time he has the choice of doing something fun or different, but eventually he imagines it leading to his death and he sticks to his routine. We see him dragging himself to his office, which is gray and devoid of light. As he takes this dreary walk to work, he passes people laughing and having fun and enjoying a beautiful day at the beach. Again and again, out of anxiety or fear or simply out of the comfort of routine, he chooses to stay in a life that is making him miserable, a life that he is not really living at all. He is not connecting with other people or doing things that bring him joy. After declining to do any of the enjoyable things that he considers, he imagines himself at a very old age, sadly climbing into his coffin, all alone, with no one around to mourn him. So finally, this is the last straw, and he decides he is ready to make a change. So instead of eating the bag lunch that he brought at his desk, he chooses to go outside. He eats those delicious-looking pancakes. He talks to a woman, and he even jumps into the ocean. He engages in the vibrant life around him. And when he comes back to the office, he is refreshed and he is dancing. The man's new energy immediately inspires his co-workers all around him, and they begin to dance and enjoy their lives as well. At the end of the short, there is new light and color in the office, and everyone, yes, everyone, is dancing. The film ends with pictures of the new life the man has created for himself. In Inner Workings, one man makes a change when he chooses life. Instead of settling for a life governed by fear or staying safe, he decides to take a risk and chooses how he wants to live. He purposefully and intentionally chooses life. Uvaharta Bahaim, choose life. We will read these words from the Torah a little bit later this morning. The text reads, "This day I call upon the heavens and earth to witness regarding you. Life and death I have set before you. So choose life, so that you and your children may live. For God gives you life and the length of your days to dwell on earth." Uvaharta Bahaim, choose life. It sounds so easy, right? No problem at all. But it can feel difficult to do sometimes, because there are times in our lives when we all feel like the man in Inner Workings, times when we feel weighed down by the routines of our lives, times when we want to make changes but fear that it will not work out. And this fear can paralyze us, so all we can do is daydream about the life that we wish we had. So to avoid this, we ask ourselves, everybody today, on this day of all days, we ask ourselves, how do I really want to live? This is the core of the High Holy Days. In these words, Uvaharta Bahaim, choose life, we're being encouraged not only to choose to live, but we are told to choose to live a meaningful and a well-lived life. In every decision we make, large and small, we are being urged to truly live. Uvaharta Bahaim. These two words sound simple and perhaps a little obvious in their message, but if it really was that easy, wouldn't more of us do it all of the time? When addressing a graduating class at Kenyon College, David Foster Wallace argued against the unconscious and the default setting of the rat race of life. He began his speech with a little parable. He said, "There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods to them and says, 'Morning, boys. How's the water?' And the two young fish swim on for a little bit, and then eventually one of them looks at the other one and says, 'What is water?'" I share this parable today as a reminder that we are not like fish. We do not need to spend our time without realizing that we are metaphorically surrounded by water. Instead, we use the words ubaharte baha'im. We use them to be aware of our lives, to be aware of the water, and to live our lives in meaningful ways. The person who modeled this the most for me was my grandfather, Joseph. He was my mother's father, who unfortunately died when I was only 2 years old. But he was an optimistic and upbeat person. He always saw the best in everyone and found hope in dark times. Grandpa was so vivacious that when he only had a few months left of life, when he was already very sick with cancer, he bought himself a new watch. Though he was very sick, he still had tasks he wanted to accomplish and places he wanted to go, and he was going to do it on time, and this new watch was going to help him get there. My mom said that this watch just summed up his entire attitude towards life. He was quiet and thoughtful with a witty sense of humor. And based on his approach to life, it would be easy to miss all of his heartache and pain. You see, he was born in England and was part of a big family with 10 siblings. He came to America as a young man and wasn't sure if he would ever see any of these siblings again, a familiar story to many. This separation from his family wore on him greatly because he missed them dearly. They stayed in touch through letters, and he did see some of them again much, much later in life. When he came to the States, he met my grandmother, who was also an immigrant. And very late in life for both of them, they had my mother. But besides his family, the thing that my grandfather loved most in life was reading. Now, this is an admirable quality for anybody, and I appreciate that very much. But what was impressive about my grandfather is that he was blind in one eye and almost completely blind in the other. But if he held his book in a really specific way, my mom tells me stories of remembering him holding his book like this, sitting for hours and reading. If he held that book in a certain way, he could still read. He found a way to choose life. He found a way to do what he loved the most to do. Despite it being difficult, he found a way to choose life. So I ask you now to take a minute to think about, who is it that models this for you? When we think about those models and choosing life for ourselves, we also begin to think about the legacies that we leave behind. Contemplating our legacies and the liturgy of the high holy days force us to come face to face with our own mortality. The truth is, none of us are going to live forever. We know this is true, yet rarely do we like to think about it or dwell on it. We know the length of our days is not up to us. We know we only have finite control over how long we live. And we all know, unfortunately, people's lives who were cut too short, too soon. Yet even knowing these truths, for the most of the time, majority of us try to ignore them. These are not truths that we like to think about. We do not like to think about our own deaths, but that is exactly what the high holy days force us to do. We come face to face with this reality. In the Untitled prayer we said just a few minutes ago, again and again we ask, who shall live and who shall die? This directly vocalizes our fears and our existential questions. We acknowledge directly that we do not have control. In an introduction book to a Musar book, a Jewish self-help of sorts, the opening begins like this. Every single thing within this book is already known to everyone reading it. There's absolutely nothing new in this book inside. Instead, this book contains truth which we all know and constantly forget or ignore. Therefore, we need reminders of them. So to help us face our own mortality, I've heard about exercises where people are asked to write their own eulogies. I'm sure many of you might have participated in similar exercises. And this is not nearly as morbid as it sounds, because in thinking about our eulogies, we have the opportunity to reflect on our lives and ask ourselves the big, very important questions about life. And it is also a reminder for us about all that is good and all the blessings in our lives as well. In this exercise, we begin by asking, what will people say about us when we are no longer here? We consider if we are really, truly living up to our values, and if we are treating the important people in our lives the way we should treat them, and also if we are spending our time well. This idea often becomes a reality when I sit with loved ones right before a shiva or a funeral. In these moments, I ask to learn about the person who has passed away. And in doing this over the years, I've heard amazing, amazing stories about triumph over difficulties, about unthinkable risks that people take, and very unique and special paths of life that everyone took. But most often, what I hear about is unconditional love. Usually a big smile comes across the face of the storyteller as they tell me about a favorite dish a person liked to cook, or a funny thing that they used to do, or about the joy the Jewish holidays brought to them, and sometimes about their unique and special gift-giving styles. But in all of my years sitting with loved ones, what comes to mind before a funeral isn't financial success or career accomplishments. Yes, of course, those things are important. I would never deny that. But what they share with me about their loved ones is the values the person lived by, the memories that they share, and the love that they will keep with them. On this theme, there's a discussion in the Talmud where the rabbis are debating what questions God will ask you when you arrive in heaven. The rabbis wanted to know what God would want to know. We might assume that the questions that God would ask us is maybe how much time we spent praying or how we observed the Jewish holidays. But instead, the rabbi suggests that God will ask us these 4 questions. Do you set aside time for learning Torah? Do you devote yourself to family? Do you do your business with integrity? And do you have hope? These questions help us focus on what is most important in life, how we want to live our lives, how we want to be remembered, and remind us that it is never too late to change. It is never too late to begin to choose life. In a TED Talk by the best-selling author Cal Honoree, he describes a scene in his home that is most likely familiar to many. He was torn having a busy, successful career and being busy with that, and also spending time with his family. And this was especially true around his young son's bedtime. He felt so torn that he bought himself a book that he thought would solve this problem. This book was called 1-Minute Bedtime Stories. And he was very proud of himself because now he could read a story to his son at bedtime without taking up too much of his day. However, after a little while, these 1-minute stories soon start to feel too long for him. So he found himself skipping half of the 1-minute stories. So instead of reading and spending quality time with his son, or even spending 1 minute with his son at bedtime, he was only giving his son 30 seconds a day. Then one night he found himself frustrated that the 30-second story was taking too long. That night, Cal realized that he had it all wrong, and he became horrified with himself. He loved his son and couldn't believe that he was not even able to give 30 seconds to bedtime for him. He realized he was not living the life he wanted or spending time in ways that mattered. So luckily, he was in a position to make big changes in his life, and now his TED Talk is called, What Happens When You Slow Down? Uvaharta b'haim, choose life. Choose to live a meaningful and well-lived life. Each and every person will have a different definition to what it means for them to choose life. Every person will choose life in their own way, and these words urge us to figure out exactly what that means to us and to begin living that way. In facing our own mortality, the high holy days inspire us to aspire to lives well lived. At the end of his TED Talk, Cal Honoree shares these words: "Now that I have slowed down and chosen life, I feel happier, healthier, more productive than I ever have before. I feel like I am living my life, not racing through it. My relationships are deeper, stronger, richer, and now reading bedtime stories to my son is the reward at the end of my day. Ubaharta Bahaim, choose life. This is not intended to just be theoretical. Instead, we are supposed to put our reflections into practice. To symbolize this, Jewish law teaches us that it is advantageous and meritorious to start to build the sukkah after we break the fast on Yom Kippur, today. This is a beautiful symbol of putting our intentions of choosing life into action. Ubaharta Bahaim, choose life. We can all change, we can all appreciate the blessings in our lives, and we can all choose life each and every day. Ubaharta Bahaim, choose life. Choose to live a meaningful and well-lived life. Ubaharta Bahaim, we can all choose, make this choice. And I hope and pray that in the next years and months ahead, we will all be able to choose life. Ubaharta Bahaim. Amen.